Hi, I'm Danielle Smith with the Alberta Enterprise Group. We are collaborating with Common Sense Edmonton to interview candidates for the upcoming civic election on October the 18th. And joining me now is the candidate who is in a ward that was once numbered Ward 5. It's now numbered Ward 7, but it has a new name. He's going to tell us what it is. His name is Daniel Heikkinen. Daniel, thanks so much for being with me today. Tell us the name of the ward that you're running in.
Absolutely, Danielle. The name for the ward is sipiwiyiniwak.
And what does that mean?
River Cree.
Okay. Well, let's talk about why it is, talk a bit about you and why it is that you're running for council. Give us a bit of your history and tell us why the experience you have would make you a good council member.
Absolutely. So I'm a bit of a rarity. I'm Edmonton born and raised, 37 years old. Attended all the different schools in the ward, went to the U of A, got a degree in psychology that looks very nice up on my wall. But I'm a small business owner. And so I've been doing that since 2014, and just trying to. I guess the reason why I was running or chose to run is a friend contacted me and he goes, "Yeah, I think I'm running for city council." And I said, "That's great. We should run together. I've always wanted to run in politics too. I've just never found the catalyst to do it." And so within a week, got my signatures filed, and just wanting to represent the people of the city as best as I can. As for why I think I'm a good candidate, well, like I said, psych degree major, sociology minor, so very good with understanding people and their desires and needs, as well as background in economics, political science, and earth and atmospheric sciences, which is coming to be more fruitful on the conversations that I'm having with people, especially as some of the groups in the city are asking about, mature tree bylaws and things we can do to protect the environment. So bit of small business background, lived in the city my whole life, and now I just want to take my shot.
That's great. Now, of course, I have to ask, did your friend go through with it? Is he running with you too?
So he's a real good idea guy, but he needs
He planted
the seed, and he was my catalyst. And I keep bugging him. I go, "Hey, do you have those signatures yet?" He goes, "I'm working on it." I'm like, "Okay, well, I've got 90 days before the election. If you're going to do this 30 days before the election, probably shouldn't."
Okay, let's talk a little bit since you are in the race and have been talking to people. Tell us what the three big issues are in your ward.
Absolutely. The first one is feedback. So when there's complaints, whether it be letters, emails, or phone calls, no one seems to hear back from their counselor, or they get the "we'll look into it" response, which is nothing. We'll look into it. Can we get back to you within a week? Now there's an expectation set. People are unhappy with the lack of coordination, it seems, with maintenance and construction in the city, as well as the river valley, is a jewel of the city and very important to us. And a lot of them are unhappy with the industrial construction that is currently going on, but there is hope that it might be paused due to another review.
Oh, interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that solar, I'm assuming you're talking about the solar project, the EPCOR project. It was controversial. It was a 7-6 vote at the time. If you'd been on council, how would you have voted?
I would have voted no. The environment, so using kind of a logical argument, if the environment is important to maintain a healthy standard of living, as well as, combating climate change, adding a 51-acre solar farm into the river valley where we might be impacting natural wildlife and fauna, or flora and fauna, might not be the best option. We have a whole bunch of low-lying, I would have proposed, we have a whole bunch of low-lying businesses and buildings in the city. Why not incentivize them to build infrastructure there that they can put panels all along, and then we're feeding the grid without impacting, habitat.
Well, this might be a good time for me to ask, because you're running against an incumbent, Sarah Hamilton. If you look back on her voting record, is there anything that you would have done differently in the last 4 years?
Well, I mean, she did raise a good point. Someone asked her once, would you tell us what it is you voted on? And she responded with, well, there's so many different things we vote on. It's massive. I think a little bit more transparency, a little bit more openness, giving people links to follow the trail of what she voted on, so that they can see if the things she campaigned on were the same things that she supported, Or if it was something that maybe went against what she would have supported, but she could provide a reason for it, so that someone might go, well, that isn't what you campaigned on. It's not what you said you stood for, but reality of the situation, okay, your vote makes sense. She was in favor of the solar farm, so that's kind of one of the ways I would have voted no. In all my door knocking, no one's ever heard from her, and she doesn't respond to complaints. So I guess just being more available for the people. After all, I mean, it's public service, so you serve, you answer, right? I tell a lot of people that, to me, you're both the city residents of the city are both customer and employer. Employer, that we should spend your money judiciously, and customer, we should resolve your complaints in a timely fashion.
Okay, let me talk to you a bit about the role of municipal government, because sometimes the city is complained about because they appear to get distracted too easily by things that aren't their job. What do you think the core job of the city is?
Oh, it's really unattractive, unsexy stuff. It's core service, right? You're not there to solve the world's problems. The city isn't there to mandate health issues. Because I have a lot of people who have asked me about, like, well, what would you say about a mask mandate, et cetera? I'm like, look, I can only talk about roads, lawn care, permitting, zoning, things that I actually would have impact on. There are another level of government. I can't do anything about that. So
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Good answer. Thank you. What do you think about the relationship between council and city administration? Should council be sort of a high-level governance body, or should it be far more involved in decision making? What do you think?
Well, I understand that as a councillor, you don't get to go down to the road construction department and yell at the employees for being rude or not doing a job in a timely fashion. Your job is to craft policy and just make sure that the rules make sense. But there are times when I think council would probably benefit from being more involved in decision making, or at least understanding where the decisions are coming from. Because if constituents are asking us, why is this happening? It helps if we have an answer, because the bureaucracy of the city, the employees, the managers, et cetera, they're the ones that run the city, right? And as my understanding, and we, council, just set up the rules to allow them to succeed. We craft the policy to determine what their actions can be. So either we're not crafting proper policy, and we're not doing that because we don't have all the information, or we're bombarded with too much information. We need the relevant information.
All right, good point. Let me talk to you about some of the spending and taxes issues. I want to go high level, and then we'll get into the granular. So first of all, the big ticket item for any city is wages, salaries, benefits, pensions. So I want to talk to you about this in 3 layers. One, is council being paid the right amount, or do you think they should take a cut? I want to talk to you about management, and then I want to talk to you about the front line. But let's begin with the council salary. Do you think it's fair, or do you think it's too high?
Well, I mean, I know that for the average counselor, it's about $116,000 plus a number of perks. And I suppose the issue is, having never done the job myself, I don't know if it's a fair compensation. I know that, just being honest, I know that there's a metric that they use to decide on what the number will be, and then peg that to, I guess, an average salary of the city, which I guess is fair. However, far be it for me to incur the wrath of the other counselors to say, well, maybe a little bit less wouldn't be a bad idea. Right. I mean, it's not like we're physically doing the job. We're just sitting in meetings and voting on stuff and making the best and listening to constituents. I'm sure we could do with a little bit less.
All right. What about getting the wrath of the managers? Because in the last since 2017, middle management's increased 22%, supervisors have increased 19%. Do you think that's a problem?
So, in my business, I have 3 managers, one for each location, and they oversee their staff. I believe the minute you get too top heavy, far too much money is spent on bureaucracy and management, and less on frontline services and frontline providers. So I won't say without looking at data, without looking at objectionable fact, that there's too many managers. But if the data shows that there is, okay, well, is there a way to automate some of the processes? Is there a way to free up more money to hire more frontline service people? because after all, it's those people that are providing the key core services the city demands, not the managers. So no offense to the managers, but if we had less of you, but you were better compensated, would that be a fair trade?
Okay, well, let's then take it down one more level to the front line, because oftentimes what happens is you get multi-year contracts that get signed, collective agreements, and what happens in the market doesn't always match what those increases are. You get movement up the pay scale on the basis of seniority. Meanwhile, in the private sector, we've seen that there have been cuts in job sharing and reduction in salaries. Do you think we need to take a closer look at the front line?
I mean, in all cases, yeah, we should ask ourselves: are we getting the most efficient use of our dollars? Yes, we have a lot of frontline staff. Great, they're providing a service. Great, but is the service they're providing making sense for the compensation they're receiving? So, and I don't know. I mean, if you look at it, like with the rise in minimum wage that the previous provincial government, mandated over a course of years, there becomes a limit in the private sector of a person's productivity and what they could achieve, and then how much is a fair compensation for them. So we reach a threshold, and then anything beyond that is not producing anything more. So then you could argue it is overpayment because that person is not capable of producing anymore. I think the same logic can be used with city employees, unfortunately. I know it's going to be a very unpopular opinion, but if we're spending more on employees, if we're spending this much money, but we're only getting this much production, then I think it's reasonable to ask that we look at narrowing the divide to create a more cost-effective city.
Okay, let's talk about the overall level of spending then. What's your sense of it? Do you think that the city is spending too much, too little, or is it about right?
So I posted on my Facebook that the city raised in 2021, according to their own figures, $5.11 billion, which is a staggering amount of money to conceive of. And I don't know if we're actually getting value for it. One thing that someone door knocking did ask me is they said, can you point to anything this city has done in the last 8 years and say, yeah, I want more of that, other than the River Valley? And I said, no, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I go, yeah, I want more of that. So, yeah, I don't think we're spending money appropriately. I think we're throwing money at problems. I think we're trying to deal with issues, but we're not asking for accountability. We're not asking for are we not asking for attainable goals or establishing goals and metrics that actually show improvement?
Okay.
I don't think we're having that, because if we were, I think more people would say, yeah, I'm happy with X.
Yeah, good point. You haven't mentioned taxes yet. Is anybody raising the issue of taxes at the door?
Yeah. Many of the neighborhoods in my ward that I've talked to, so especially Granville, Rio Terrace, Wolf Willow, rising tax rates and a decrease in service. So much like we ask, well, for a public employee, is there a certain amount of wage and a certain amount of production? Well, the people of the city have every right to demand. We pay a certain amount of tax. We expect a certain amount of service. And a lot of them don't feel they're getting it.
So I guess that's the question. Do you spend more money and bring up the service, or do you bring the tax rates down to match what the city can deliver?
First things first, before we start moving any levers, we have to figure out where the money's going and why it's not being spent effectively or efficiently, why we're not getting the perceived value. If we're raising the right amount of money, but not spend, the last thing we want to do is lower taxes and then find out that, oh, actually, no, every dollar we were spending was being spent appropriately. We're now going into a deficit. We now need to raise taxes, incurring the wrath of the common voter. If we keep taxes where they're at and we don't improve the efficiency of our spending, we're always going to have an issue. In fact, the city, by the way, is also, I believe, at 54% its allowable debt ceiling. So it's borrowed against itself in order to fund projects. And again, I don't think we're really getting any value. So I think first things first, find out where the money's going, find out how the money is being spent, find out if we can be more efficient with it, and then let the people know across the city, throughout your ward, here's where the money's going, here's how it's being spent, and yes, after strict, in-depth review, this is as efficient as it gets without massive overhaul.
Do you think that there's a need for new taxation powers to get new sources of revenue?
I don't think so. I'm against increasing or adding further taxes, because the issue with that is that, we start raising more and more money. We don't have to be smart with it. So and I feel I don't want to say that's in every city, and it's probably true of every level of government, is that the more money you have, the less likely you are to be intelligent with it, right? We're always being asked as individuals, as private citizens, balance your checkbook, tighten your belt, live within your means. So why can't the same logic apply to a city?
Great point. Let me ask you about another aspect of the revenue question, because if you're a growing city, attracting new people within the borders, as well as attracting new businesses, that will also increase revenue. So what do you think needs to be done to attract more businesses to Edmonton proper? You could do a number of things: reduce taxes, give tax holidays, reduce regulation, have money to do direct business attraction with direct grants. What kind of levers do you favor?
Well, I'm in favor when it comes to small business, reducing the barriers to business. So a big issue in the city has been permitting, the delayed time it takes to get permits. So businesses, like construction businesses, struggle to get work done in a timely manner, because a permit that should take no more than 2 weeks to review and approve takes months. So there's an issue there with businesses wanting to be efficient themselves. New businesses, again, reducing the barriers of. I have a friend that wanted to open a mechanic shop, so automotive mechanic, and he'd done it for 20 years, and he was wanting to create something for his family. Maybe his kids would follow him into it. He didn't know, but he wanted to create something else that would be a legacy. And months were spent looking for the right place, finding an ideal landlord. Great, found the right location. It was perfect. He didn't need to adjust anything. And then the city came in and said, sorry, you're going to have to spend $30,000 to improve the HVAC unit in here. And he goes, but I'm not doing auto body. I'm not spraying anything. I'm doing mechanics, and there's enough ventilation, like it meets the requirements. And so I would also ask, are the bylaws that we are passing, both private and personal, are they actually having the achieved objective? Like, are they actually doing what they're set out to do, or are they burdensome? Are they open to interpretation, which means that that inspector canceled the project, but another one would approve it. So the rules need to be the same regardless of who you are, but either a large business or small business, and they can't be open to interpretation.
That's a great example. Let me ask you about the energy sector, because it's been a source of great jobs in the oil and gas sector for a long time in the Edmonton area. Leduc's not that far away. Do you think there is still a good opportunity for oil and gas jobs?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the fact that after canceling Keystone, the U.S. government then went and asked for 800,000 barrels of oil from foreign governments. So oil is still going to be around for at least another 40, 50 years based on even the most conservative estimates. There's still a career to be had while we find out what the next thing's going to be in transition towards it. So yeah, there's still lucrative jobs to be had. It's not going away anytime soon. We as a country may decide that we want to do less with oil, but we're 35 approximate million out of 7 billion. So there's a lot of people that want it, that are going to need it, especially as their countries develop. Why shouldn't we be the ones to furnish that need?
All right. Let me talk to you a bit about infrastructure and housing. I'll start with infrastructure first, because the Valley Line Southeast has suffered multiple delays during its construction. What's your understanding of some of the reasons for those delays, and what do you think could be done differently to avoid delays in future?
Well, the Valley Line Southeast, admittedly, I know nothing about, because I never followed regarding the LRT, just knowing that it was expensive, it was delayed. And now I do know with the Valley Line West, that they're going through neighborhoods and established streets. So I can speak more to that one than I can
Well,
southeast.
I guess the bigger question I'm getting to is how do you prevent these big projects from going through either extensive delays or extensive cost overruns?
So, perfect question. Thank you. We have to ask ourselves, I think, the one of two questions: do we need to do this? So, are we spending money that solves a problem? Which I think there's a lot of people in the city that would like better transit. I mean, we're you go to Calgary, you go to Vancouver, their transit systems are light years ahead of us,
Hmm.
and much more enjoyable to use than ours. In fact, I think we're quite famous for how not to do it right. That could be for a number of reasons. The second question, though, that we ask ourselves is, who benefits? If only a small percentage of people benefit, then that's not an effective use of tax dollars. We should try to get as many people under that umbrella as possible. I think that trying to shoehorn an LRT through municipal areas is that have been long established isn't the right answer. I think we should be following major roads where it's easy to construct next to them. There's no infrastructure that we're tearing out, right? As we're establishing a train line through city streets, we don't have to worry about power lines. We don't have to worry about gas lines or water lines. It's so as an example, if we say ran down Fox Drive and then Fox Drive to down the White Mud to 170th Street, now we can serve the West End community and can build the train from there following major roads, but also then the areas of the city that are currently not being serviced, such as Edgemont, Hamptons, Granville, Glastonbury, like the far west side of the city. We can easily build a train with little impact out to them. So it would actually bring in more people. Now, maybe they've done the studies on it and it shows that's not tenable, but I'm just kind of throwing out ideas.
Well, and it's a good thought. So thank you for raising that as an alternative approach. Do you think that LRT, because it's such a huge ticket item and because of some of the problems you identified, do you think there's a better way to spend public transit dollars? Or do you think LRT is the right way to do it?
It's a hybrid situation. It's a hybrid solution. I think LRT, if done appropriately, helps, but I also believe that we have already a well-established bus system. We should be adding more buses to the lines. We should be getting the weight down for people so that it's more efficient, and we should have rapid transit, point to point, no stop. Because the issue, and you can see buses during the day where there's no one on them, and the train as well, there's no one on them. So I question, are they not being used because of the fare, or is it more likely they're not being used because they're not convenient? And if it's not convenient, no one's going to use it because it's too frustrating.
All right. Let's talk a bit about another development issue, which is housing. Everyone says they support affordable housing. When I say that term, what does that mean to you?
So affordable housing is for new families, and Edmonton actually is one of the most affordable places in Canada. The data came out that if your combined income is $87,000, within 3 years you can afford a $400,000 home. Now, the infill, and by the way, some of the regions or districts in my ward that I've talked to are unhappy with the infills that are happening because the lots themselves are minimum 400,000 to start with, some of them as high as 800,000. So if they're trying to provide more affordable housing, starting with an $800,000 lot and then spending, ballpark 300,000 per skinny home, you're at 1.4 million. Now you're going to sell those to make a profit. So we're talking 800,000 bare minimum. You turned one 800,000 lot into two 800,000 lots. It's not more affordable.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the question a different way, because the new Edmonton City Plan also focuses on urban development, promoting more density, which you just mentioned there, more transit, 15-minute communities, but it also restricts new housing developments on the outskirts of the city. Are you concerned that that might affect housing affordability?
Well, yeah, there's going to be potentially, with supply and demand. If there's a massive number of people wanting to move to the city, and we don't have new homes costing in the, you see the advertisements, homes in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. If we don't have the supply, then all that's left are areas that are being gentrified, property values going up because they're in demand, and then we price ourselves out. We don't want to turn into Toronto or Vancouver, where that same report, by the way, Vancouver, you would need $250,000 as a combined salary, and it would take you 34 years to save the down payment. So we don't need to create those problems. We need to maintain what we've got. Now, urban densification, I'm in favor of. The Rexall, what was the old Rexall place, the old arena, they want to turn that area into mixed housing. So multifamily, single family, office space. It has the LRT right there. I'm a big fan of that because, that's going to take an area that right now is not being used properly, add more living space, and already match that 15-minute community ideal. And it's going to raise more tax income, right? It's going to improve the quality of the area, because the issue with the north side of Edmonton is that for a long time it's received no investment. Everything's gone to the south side of the city. So we need to, I think, even though it's not in my ward, I think we need to, for the good of the city, we need to change our focus in what we're doing. So I'm in favor of urban densification, but we also have to keep up with, you mentioned infrastructure earlier, we also have to keep up with that, because if we designed an area originally, or was developed for, say, 100 people, and then we do some infill and we add 20 more people, the infrastructure can't take it. So now we're spending more money to catch up on our population densification.
Let me ask you, since you've got some ideas for the old Rexall, what about the Blatchford area, the old airport land? So it's the city's taken on the role of developer. Do you think that that's the right approach, or do you have a different idea there too?
I think it's fair to say that anytime government gets its hands involved in something like development, or anything that private enterprise is shown to be more efficient at or more effective at, it's going to be a problem. When the government shows up to say, "I'm here to help," it's the scariest words ever. So the city wanting to be a developer, it's like, that's not your job. Your job is to make sure that core services are being delivered. Your job is to make sure that people's needs are being met, first needs, then wants. You should have tendered it out to a number of development companies to see who was going to offer the best deal, the best offer, and let them do it, because they can do it not only for cheaper, but more efficiently. They have a profit motive, after all. The city doesn't act with a profit motive. So therefore, to them, I don't think it really matters how long it takes to get it done, right? They'll feel that so long as they're getting it done right, it was worth it. But private enterprise goes, okay, we need to do this well, we need to do it right. We cannot afford to come back and fix things. So we're going to do it right the first time. So the Blatchford project, no one's happy with. And I think it just goes to show, the city should stick to its own lane, stick to what it's good at.
Let me ask you before I leave this, because when I ask the affordable housing question, often people lead with homelessness. And so I want to just see if you want to address that issue as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the solutions to homelessness in the city, and it's on the rise, we have tent cities that show up. I believe we need to look into supportive housing. So in Finland, which before we started, we discussed the nature of my last name, ironically enough. In Finland, they actually found that supportive housing was the most effective way of reducing homelessness. It allows people to regain their dignity, regain a sense of hope. Also, if you're wanting to regain your life, it helps to have, a set address so that you can take part in the system. You can receive mail. You have an identity as far as the city's concerned. So I think that it's not just a matter of affordable housing, but it's also creating enough supportive housing in neighborhoods as well. And this has been a debate that I've had with a number of people, but I think the consensus we have is that you don't tell the people in the neighborhood that the person moving in is homeless, because then that comes with its stigma. It comes with judgment. Instead, it's just someone moving into the neighborhood. There's support programs to help them with drug addiction, with unresolved mental health issues. The fact is that they have a stable roof over their head. They're more likely to stick to those programs. So it not only helps treat homelessness, but also the root causes of.
Okay. There's a number of issues that came up in the last year. I just want to run by a few of those before we, as we finish up here. First was the Defund the Police movement. What does that movement mean to you, and what do you think should be learned from it?
So the Defund the Police movement, which originated out of the States with the issues they were having there, the police have an unenviable job, and defunding them is not the issue. In fact, in the cities where we see defunding of the police, now they're patrolling less, they have less resources to do their job, so they have to cut back on certain areas, and that sees a rise in crime, a rise in assaults, and now those same communities are calling out for the police. defunding the police isn't the issue. Accountability might be the issue. More communication between the city and its services and the people, so that they understand what is and isn't an emergency, and get to know the police that you're dealing with, because they're part of the community and they're doing the job because they want to serve. And unfortunately, they see a lot of horrible things, and it does take a toll on you. And I think people just need to be aware, like, they're just trying to do the best they can with what they have. Defunding them isn't making us safer. As a good example, let's go all the way back to the LRT. The number of assaults that have been occurring to women, especially women of color, on Edmonton's LRT is unacceptable. We don't have transit police, like undercover plainclothes officers, riding the trains because, for whatever reason, I don't know. But if you had them, then the people who would be instigating these crimes are going to behave normally, because if you don't know you're being observed, you're going to behave differently. And then we can actually do more to protect the people riding. So defund the police is not the direction we need to go.
Okay, let me ask you about another law enforcement issue from a different angle. 40 kilometer per hour speed limits in the residential areas. Are you hearing any controversy around that? Any problems, or do you support the decision?
I think people, yes and no. Some people are in favor of it. Some people are against it. Honestly, I can set my cruise control to 40 kilometers an hour, so it's not an issue. I think some of the complaints that have occurred are, school zones that go until 9 o'clock. It's like, but there's no one there. There's no one using the park. There's no one using the playground. It's like, can we shorten the hours to, like, say 5 or 6, where the kids should be at home having dinner, not out late at night. As for 40 kilometers an hour, some people are annoyed with it, but I don't think it's an issue. I agree. Most municipal neighborhoods should be 40 kilometers an hour anyway.
Okay, let me ask you about privatization. Edmonton's garbage collections already have private. There's discussion of other things that could potentially be private delivered, like golf course operation, snow removal. What's your thought on that? Should there be more private sector delivery of public services?
So here's where I stand on privatization. And my view could be wrong, but so if I had a city councillor, if I have an issue, I need to go to the city manager and bring it up with them. And then it's up to them whether they do something with it. And then I and the council have to be willing to fire said city manager for not acting on those complaints. So you're kind of put in a hard position. If the city managers are really good at their job, you don't want to fire them, because how are you going to find qualified individuals? But with privatization, if we hire out a company to do, say, lawn care, snow removal, etc., if they're not doing the job, then we can, again, profit motive, right? They're going to want to do the job. They're going to want to do the job well. They're going to want to do it for as cheap as they can afford to, because they want the job. We should look into it. I don't think it should be off the table. I think we should be having a discussion about it, see if it makes sense. If it's a mixed privatization, makes sense, because by having them, not do the job, well, then we can cancel your contract. You weren't fulfilling your obligation, as opposed to a city employee where if they group of them aren't cleaning the streets in a right amount of time, they're not mowing grass in an effective amount of time, the process to resolve that is much slower.
All right. Let me ask you one more question. It's a little on the lighter side. I'm looking at a picture of the think tank library downtown. Have you had a chance to see it?
No.
Oh, you haven't?
I don't go downtown very much.
All right. That's fine. It's a little controversial because of the design. Have you heard that?
Tell me more.
It looks like a tank. And I was just going to ask you if you love it or if you hate it.
I haven't seen it because I try not to go downtown because it's such a nuisance for me, but I'll do my best to look it up and
send me a note and let me know. You're going to go downtown a lot when you get elected.
Oh, well, that is true, unfortunately.
All right, let me just ask a couple closing questions just about the role of the council member. So there is going to be a referendum on daylight savings, on equalization. There aren't any municipal issues in Edmonton that are going to be put to a vote, but there are in other municipalities. Generally speaking, do you think that the people should be able to vote directly on issues, or do you prefer to have all the issues decided by city council?
Well, I already established that, my view of city council is that the people are the employer. So they should be anything that is major. So, are we gonna install, a street lamp over here? We're gonna install some signs over here. That to me isn't major. Major, like you mentioned, equalization, daylight savings. Those are major issues. Things of that caliber should be brought up, and town hall should happen with the people, so that you get their input as best as you can. See where the winds are blowing, and if the majority of the people are in favor of something, okay, well, that's what we do. Why? Because that's what the people want. It's that simple.
Okay.
I mean, thankfully, the city doesn't have to, doesn't have any say in equalization, because I believe that's a federal matter, a provincial matter. So we're safe from the liability of that one. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely out to lunch in my view of what a city council should be.
Well, let me ask you a question then, just related to this, is that from time to time, the city administration will make a recommendation that they say is best for the city as a whole, but your constituents would want you to vote the other way. What would you do in those cases?
Well, I'd ask myself, who benefits, and do we actually need to do this? And if what we're doing for the good of the city only benefits a small number of people, right? Like, I keep throwing out there as a benchmark. If we can hit 60 to 70% of people in our policies, supporting them, like it supports them, then that's good. The closer we get to 50, then it's a coin flip. We either do it or don't. But if we can't guarantee, or we can't see that we're going to get that kind of buy-in, that kind of support, or support that many people, then I guess we'll vote against it, because is it really doing what we're setting out to do?
All right. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate your time.
You bet it. That is Daniel Heikkinen. He is your candidate for sipiwiyiniwak.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.